Calificas para ser legal, ¿quieres saber? Solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
Good morning and welcome for joining us in this English part of our weekly radio show, Para Ser Legal, to be Legal. My name is Andrés Mejer. I'm a speaker, published author, and immigration attorney. Today, we are covering what was Trump's announced immigration reform last week. What does the plan entail? Is it good? Is it not? What are the problems with it? What needs improvement? And secondly, we're going to be talking about the 4 pillars that any immigration reform plan needs to contain. So thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Andrés Mejer, and let's first talk about what is Trump's immigration reform plan that he announced just last Thursday. Well, it doesn't really have a name, but it is a fundamental change to our present immigration system. And it really has 2 principal components. First, he wants what's called a merit-based immigration system. It's not the first time that he's talked about it. He's fleshed it out a little bit more here. Secondly, it's changes to our southern border. Those are the 2 principal things that he announced last week. So let's talk about the first one. Merit-based system. What is that? Well, he's saying, look, what he says is today, the present system, 66% of immigrant visas are granted to family-based petitions. Meaning, my father applied for me, my wife applied for me, I applied for my kids, or I applied for my parents or my siblings. It's family-focused. And only 12% are skills-focused or employment-focused. Now, important thing to note, on the family side, in many countries, there are not enough visas. For example, if you're from Mexico, it will take you longer to enter the U.S. So if you're from Mexico, India, China, or the Philippines, it'll take you longer than it would if you were from the UK, Chile, Argentina, or other countries, just by the number of volume of immigrants coming in. On the employment side, although there are those limitations, they don't reach capacity, meaning if today you as an employer want to apply for somebody, you can. There will be a visa. The problem is it's expensive, it's difficult, and it's time consuming. And this administration has made it harder than it's ever been before. So, but he says, listen, I want to change to a merit-based system. How do I do that? He's going to assign points. How many? We don't know yet. These are principles. He hasn't given any details, but he's going to focus on age, education, job offer, skills, command of the English language, and to a lesser extent, family ties to the U.S. This is not so different from what Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have today. They do have merit-based systems. So I'm not saying it's inherently bad. It all depends on how it's going to be implemented. So he wants to go from family-based, 66% today, and 12% employment, to 60% employment. That is a dramatic change. And he wants high skills, meaning college educated, years of experience, high wage earning jobs. The average median immigrant family today makes $43,000. He wants to change it to $96,000. So what does that tell you? This is not small business friendly. Most small businesses don't necessarily have many employees that are making $96,000 or more. They may have 1, they may have 2, but they don't really have 10 and still be a small business. Because think about it. If you have 10 employees making $100,000, that's at least $1 million in payroll. That means that business would have to be at a bare minimum $5 to $7 million in annual income. That's not a small business anymore. It's a medium-sized business. So and most of businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. So this does not help the majority of businesses. It may help American society as a whole, assuming there are enough jobs to support that. I don't know that there are. Yes, there is a need and a desire, particularly in STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, to come in, and those are high-paying jobs, generally speaking, because they have to have master's and doctorate's degrees. But look, doctors, yes, will be making that or more coming in. That's true. Most attorneys are not. Most engineers starting out also aren't. So most accountants, the same. They're not earning $100,000 the moment they graduate from college. That's somebody with 10, 15, 20 years experience, and depending on where in the country that you live. So this plan sounds good on some level. Realistically, what it's going to do is reduce the number of immigrants, which is what he wants. He says he's not going to reduce the number of visas available, but if there aren't jobs if there aren't jobs available, then those individuals aren't coming. So details matter. Also, what about low-skilled labor? What about agriculture, farming, for example, landscaping, construction? These are menial jobs. Some are highly skilled, meaning a good air conditioning technician, for example, or a good plumber. That may not be book smarts. That may not be I got a degree in plumbery, but I got a vocational degree or a vocational certification, maybe, or in some countries, maybe I've just been doing it for 10 years. So skills are important. And agriculture, listen, you go to Florida, Texas, Arizona, particularly California, parts of New York on the north, they can't get by without immigrant labor. They just can't. It's a real problem. And the margins aren't very high in comparison to large agricultural companies. So how do you address low-skilled labor? We don't know. It's important. Second component, southern border. Now, first of all, it shouldn't be just the southern border, it should be the northern border. Here's where it gets problematic. He says he wants to reduce frivolous asylum claims, but he also believes all asylum is frivolous, that they're all crap, that we shouldn't be a place of refuge. That's not what, so his version, Trump's version of America is very different than my own. It shouldn't be, considering his wife's an immigrant, his wife just applied for her parents, his in-laws to come into the United States. They achieved green card and will be, they just received their citizenship, again, through the kind of immigration that he wants to remove. So he wants to reduce frivolous asylum claims. And he's done everything in his power in the past in the past year and a half, to really reduce it, eliminate it. He's trying to reduce who can apply. He's trying to reduce where they can apply. He's trying to speed up the denials. He wants them to be detained. He wants them to be deported. So he's doing everything in his power to get rid of and reduce asylum. He also wants to increase family detention. What I'm talking about. So in the past couple of radio shows, we've talked about the change of the immigrants that are coming to the U.S. It used to be mostly individuals by themselves coming to work. Now it's predominantly families, parents with their children, who are coming here for a better life because they're trying to leave the war, the horrors that are happening in El Salvador and Guatemala and Nicaragua and in Honduras. So in that part of the world, a lot of them really have become failed states. It's, we spoke about El Salvador, for example, has 6.4 million citizens in 2017. Today in the U.S., we have over 1.4 million people from El Salvador. So 25% of their population is in the U.S. That's massive. That's significant. That's a real problem for El Salvador. It may or may not be a problem for us. But clearly, El Salvador is having a significant problem if 25% of the population have left the country. So, what are the problems with Trump's plan? It doesn't address undocumented immigrants. We have between 10.7 and 12 million, depending on your report. Is it 2018, 17, 16, or 15? Because the numbers keep on changing, and lately they've been going down. So we have approximately 11 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S., and his plan does nothing about that. His plan does not talk about DACA or Dreamers. Why? Well, because it's contentious. Because the plans in the past that I've talked about, Dreamers, have not been approved. So he's going to instead ignore it altogether. It doesn't talk about TPS, temporary protective status, that he, in his administration, has removed for country after country after country. People who have been here 10, 15 plus years. So, yes, I understand the argument that perhaps there was a hurricane or perhaps there was a natural disaster. It was temporary relief, and that temporary relief has now become 10, 15 years. I get that. But there also needs to be a recognition that they have been here, they are law-abiding, they are paying their taxes, and they are gainfully employed. And now just sending them back to their country after they've been here 15 years, and maybe this is the only country their children have known, is not American. He also wants to reduce asylum for the neediest people. I think that's wrong. Again, that's not the country that I became, that I joined, that I became a citizen for, that helped me and my family in our time of need. Think of, for example, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. Now, I don't agree with their political views, either one of them, but they're both the children of Cuban immigrants. So if their parents weren't allowed refugee status here, they wouldn't be here today. That's a shame. Now, irrespective of political views, they're intelligent, they're articulate, they believe, they're passionate about what they say. I may disagree with them, but this is America. We're allowed to disagree. We should still be able to have that conversation. Now, so my name is Andres Mejer. For those that are just tuning in, we're talking about two things. First, we talked about Trump's immigration reform plan that he announced last week. There were two principal components. He wants to change from a family-based visa system to an employment-based, merit-based visa system, and he wants to implement changes in the southern border, including, I forgot to mention this, including security upgrades that are paid for by a tax on commerce. Again, obviously he wants his wall built, but what else beyond that wall, we don't really know. What's the tax going to look like? He said it's going to be market-based, whatever that means. That it's been, the fees haven't been increased in a long time. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't know how he defines market or otherwise. What I do know is I don't put a lot of confidence in what he says. I prefer to focus on what he does. So we'll see what the plan looks like. The second component that we're going to talk about now is what are the 4 pillars that immigration reform should have. In this, I'll be talking in Arizona next week, specifically on Channel 7, about what the 4 pillars of immigration reform should be. So, number 1, the first pillar that immigration reform should have, I call it the Black Panther path to status. Why? Well, because Babadijan Bamba, who was the military leader in the Black Panther movie, he came out as being a DACA holder. And represented proudly that he worked on major movies because he now got employment authorization under Obama. So, path to status. We have 11 million plus or minus undocumented immigrants. That includes DACA holders, TPS holders. They all need a path to legal status. And what I mean by a path to legal status, in an ideal world, someone applies, they've been here a certain period of time, they pass a criminal background test, they pay taxes, they speak English, they apply and they get their green card. Then 3, 5, 7 years later, they apply for citizenship, and if they meet the criteria, they get citizenship. That's in an ideal scenario. That's what I call a path to citizenship. Immigration reform does not have to have a path to citizenship. I would like it to be that way. I think it's fair and just, particularly for those that have been here 10, 15 years. Making them go through a 10 or 15, 20-year process, I don't think is appropriate, but I'd be willing to compromise as long as they get legal status. Again, it could be something like DACA or something like TPS, some registered status, lawfully admitted into the United States. paying taxes, no criminal background, speaking English, have certain skills. I'm fine with all of that. They get legal status, and then at some point, either a family relative or an employer can apply for their green card. Once they've had the green card for a certain period of time, they can then apply for citizenship. So we have a path that exists today. What these undocumented immigrants don't have is a means to achieve legal status. Once they have it, they can then follow the green card path or the existing citizenship path once they have a green card. So ideally, they apply and they get the green card. And then later on, they apply for citizenship. I would compromise and accept that, someone like Babadijan Bamba, who has DACA, well, if you've had DACA long enough, you should be able to apply directly for your green card. Or if you have nothing because you came in after you were 16 or 15 years old, when you were 16 or more, then you apply for something, keep that for a certain period of time, and then apply for your green card. And I would be okay with that because it provides them a path to legal status. It provides them a path to normal life for them and for their families, which today, it would allow them to come out of hiding and stop living in fear. That every time they get in the car, they might get pulled over and they might be separated from their families. That if their children are sick and you have to take them to the hospital and you borrow someone's car, you may not get home that night. That's the fear that they're living in, and we need to change that. Second, Gene Hackman's border security. Gene Hackman, although born in the United States, Canadian parents, Canadian mother, went to the military, served his country, also a prominent actor. Now, we need reasonable security. I'm fine with you're undocumented, you go to the military, you can get legal status. That would be awesome. This administration doesn't even want green card holders. They only want citizenships. They're revoking people's ability to serve once they're already registered and waiting to get called up. That's what this administration is doing. That should change. Reasonable technology. I'm not against the wall. I don't have a problem with the wall. Now, is the wall in the southern border the best way to control our borders? In some places, yes. In other places, no. So there are knowledgeable individuals that work for DHS or in the military that can make those decisions. That shouldn't be a political decision. That should be what do we need to secure our borders? And I mean borders plural, north and south. I don't want to limit it just to south. Otherwise, we close one door and leave the other one open. That's silly. So what's reasonable technology to control our borders? Technology, people, and the wall where it's necessary. Look, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, their parents were Cuban immigrants. They wouldn't be here if not for our laws that granted Cubans refugee status. We don't want to limit that. We want to continue having the right laws in place for the right times. 3, the third critical reform, pillar that you need for immigration reform, I call it Chaplin's reforms. Charlie Chaplin, very famous actor, early 20th century, he was deported from the United States. Why? Politics alone. In the McCarthy era, they thought he was a socialist and a communist, so they said, you're not coming back to the United States. Goodbye. He lived out of the U.S. for over 25 years. He ultimately was allowed to come back for an award ceremony in the 70s, shortly before he died. We should not be deporting people for political reasons only. That is wrong. We should not have a Department of Justice that can appoint only judges that meet a certain political criteria, that appoint only attorneys that meet a certain ideology. That's not how this should be. Immigration court should be an actual court. It should be the same as a bankruptcy court or a tax court, separate and distinct from the Department of Justice. We must give our judges back control and discretion of their cases. Incredibly important. I don't want any president dictating an outcome for a case. The case should be about the law and it should be about the facts. It should not be about the politics and it should not be about the optics. Justice is blind at the end of the day. We need to remember that. 4th, Melania's future flow. Melania Trump, Donald Trump's wife. She's an immigrant. Came in as an O1 person with unique abilities or skills. She applied for her parents. Obviously, Melania is a U.S. citizen today. Her parents also achieved legal status and have their citizenship. We need future flow. What does that mean? High-skilled labor and low-skilled labor. High-skilled, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. If somebody wants to come and study into the United States, they should be able to do that and then be able to work afterwards or build the business if they're so inclined. If someone already has their doctorate and wants to come in and work and use that education that they got, to the benefit of our society, they should be a streamlined process to do that. If somebody wants to invest hard dollars, $500,000, $200,000, significant money into our economy to build jobs, to help infrastructure, to help our society, they should have a streamlined process to do that. Not something that takes 2 or 3 years and has a lot of hoops and that you never know whether you're going to invest a lot of money, time, and energy and you don't know whether you're going to get the lawful status out of it. It needs to have predictability. So future flow. High-skilled labor, but also low-skilled labor. Agriculture. What are our economy's needs? Well, that changes depending on different parts of the country. Upstate New York, Florida, California, lots of agriculture. They use immigrant labor. Now, that immigrant labor should have lawful status. We don't want any employer taking advantage of immigrants, but there has to be a recognition that we as a society, as a country, as an economy as a whole, has a need for low-skilled labor. Jobs that, let's be frank, Americans aren't going to do or prefer not to do because they may already have a high school degree. They may have a college degree, and they prefer to work in an office environment rather than in the fields. And that's okay. We shouldn't think any less of them for it because we as a society need it if we want our bananas and our apples and our grapes or our dairy. It requires workers. We need it. Now, there should be E-Verify for every business. That means an employer must go through a process and determine that their employees are legally in the United States. But you can't do that if you don't have a path for the undocumented immigrants. You have to have one in order to have the other. You can't have E-Verify because now you're punishing employers. Someone who's been here for 10, 15, 20 years, has been an employee of mine, fantastic and great. I now learned, or I later learned that, they gave me information that wasn't true. Maybe it was a fake social, maybe it was a fake driver's license, I don't know. But it wasn't accurate information. Now I have to let that person go. How do I replace that person? No, we need to give them a path to achieve legal status. And once that's in place, then require employers to use E-Verify. Again, we want to stop this process. We want to give a path for those that are here without permission. We want to control our borders so that more people don't come without permission. And we want to make sure that employers are only employing those that are here with status. Now, that also means, because walls don't stop people that come in on planes, so you have to have a method to control visas. My family came as visa overstays. There are over 40% of the 11 million undocumented immigrants came as legal immigrants and then overstayed their visa for whatever reason. So you need a way to control that. That's called future flow. Low-skilled labor, high-skilled labor, employment verification, controlling our visas. So 4 critical paths, pillars to control immigration reform. Black Panther Path to Status for undocumented immigrants, Gene Hackman's border security, Chaplin's reforms of the courts and of the bureaucracy, clear up the backlog, and Melania's and Schwarzenegger's future flow. How do we? So we're now solving. We're giving a path to status for those that are here without permission. We're securing our borders to make sure that people aren't entering legally and overstaying or just entering illegally and doing whatever they want. We're making sure that employers have consequences if they employ those that are undocumented after we've implemented a path to status for those that want it. That's a successful plan, and it's not rocket science. It's, the majority of Democrats and Republicans across the spectrum know this. There are prior plans that have discussed this. There just needs to be the will to get it done. And I don't know that this president has that will. I think his plan is for political points. He wants to be able to have rallies and say that he wants to solve immigration. He wants to say that he has a plan. It's not a real plan. First of all, it doesn't have any substance details. Second, it doesn't have any sponsors in either the House of Representatives or in the Senate. It's missing certain critical things. It's a proposal. Okay, but, proposals require compromise and requires a conversation and a willingness to have a give and take. Trump has not shown any willingness on the immigration side. He's killed two deals that he initially said yes to and then ultimately changed his mind because he didn't like the backlash for certain elements of his base. Leaders lead. Will he? It remains to be seen. I hope he does, for all our sakes. Thank you very much. I'm Andres Mejer. If you have any questions or comments, my number is 888-888-0307. I look forward to answering your questions. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Andres Mejer Law, on our website, andresmejerlaw.com, or on social media. Our handle is always Andres Mejer Law. Until next time.
Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.